Issue 243. We start out in Mushroom Hill Zone where someone says this looks like the place and says, "Alright, number 47, time to get to work." So is he talking to himself or someone else, maybe over the phone? Is this gonna inconvenience Sonic? Knuckles asks him who he is and why he's on his island, and for some reason the guy mistakes him for Vector, so either he's extremely ignorant or just messing with them. The guy introduces himself as an intergalactic debt collector, and he says Knuckles has defaulted on his debt payments and his island will be taken from him, and I have the biggest smile typing that because of how silly that is. So he's either lying to mess with him, or Angel Island really was loaned at one point before Knuckles was even around. Knuckles gets angry at Vector rather than the debt collector. When he's interrupted when explaining who he is, which would only make sense if the guy knew who he was already or else he'd be surprised and want to listen further, the guy threatens Knuckles with forced eviction. Then some giant sandworm comes out of the dirt, revealing himself to be the guy's colleague, number 47. Well, that's a good twist. I was expecting in person. He tells Knuckles that the sandworm eats everything in sight, and the bigger he gets, the stronger he is. Then he eats Knuckles, and he dies. No, I'm sure he'll be fine, and the sandworm somehow didn't hurt him with his teeth at all. With the debt collector sociopathically not reacting at all to what he just saw, he tells 47 to get a move on to some other planets, and then Sonic and the Chaotix show up through a portal, with SPO saying that Omni's sensors were right about the floating island being under attack. Mighty explains that when the Special Zone imploded, the Chaotix tried to research ways of bringing it back. That wouldn't bring back the people in it, so why even bother? There's too many zones as it is. Vector says that unfortunately traveling to the Universal Chronotron Archive doesn't come cheap, and neither do long-distance calls to Dimensional Retrieval Services. They have those? Even the Zone Cops didn't have that, I assume. I mean, in a fantasy universe full of magic where even witches exist, why wouldn't Zone Cops be able to recreate a destroyed zone? They'd have the data on it already, so they'd know what to recreate. So why didn't they do it by now? Sonic calls Vector out, "So you mortgaged the floating island?" It's entertaining to see Vector make an irresponsible mistake. It feels more in character for him than him being an engineer with a lab. Of course, he can be both. I'd just like if this comic were to make it more clear he has the same characterization I expect of Vector, but with a scientist twist, because it feels weird that he speaks so formally in this comic. Sonic complains that as usual, the situation with the Chaotix is crazy, as if it's any crazier than the adventures he usually goes on. I think he doesn't like them, which makes sense for this comic. Sonic is humiliated because he's unable to attack the sandworm, I guess it has really tough skin, and he's relatable saying, "This is so embarrassing." He points out just how tense the situation really is, saying that if the creature eats the island, who knows where the Chaos Emeralds might end up. I really don't understand why a debt collector would have the island destroyed to collect his money instead of just stealing everything on the island, including all of his ancient treasures, which would easily give him the money he needs and then some. This doesn't seem to benefit him at all. Then the Chaotix get eaten and thrown into a purple goop-filled place in the sandworm's stomach, and Charmy's actually charming, making me smile and giggle a little, as in a situation like this, he just says, "Hi, Knuckles! We were wondering where you got to." Unfortunately, rather than Vector just telling him to shut up, he reacts realistically by acting nervous because Knuckles would naturally be mad at him. This is a pretty charming story. Sonic taunts the sandworm, calling it ugly to get his attention, goes to the Zoot Tube, and when it bursts through the wall to threaten him, he calls it a show-off amusingly, naturally annoyed at how he got here easier. Sonic says in front of a ring with a pink void in it that the last time he visited, Porker told him this was a portal to the Special Zone, and now all that's left of the zone is empty space. Sonic says, which means nobody's gonna mind me parking in Monster's innards there. Wait, wouldn't that kill the Chaotix? Is he the real Sonic? The debt collector is suddenly right next to Sonic because I guess he can teleport, and he says in a panic that the back of 47's stomach has a portal to the 100 and Spindle storage bay in it. Oh, that actually explains why he can just keep on eating forever. That shows some good care put into the writing. It also explains why he has anything to gain from the sandworm eating stuff, because he's not really destroying it, just teleporting it. He says Sonic will have sucked through months worth of collections, planets, moons, and stars. Wait, how can anyone exist on stars for him to collect debts on? Is he literally collecting entire planets, moons, and stars, thus destroying solar systems? This guy's an even bigger villain than I thought. I'm really wondering why Sonic is able to successfully block this guy into considering the debt paid. Well, I didn't even know that Knuckles wasn't Vector, so maybe he's genuinely so out of the loop and ignorant that he has no idea who Sonic is. And Sonic definitely comes off on the surface as sleazy enough to do such a thing, especially with his smirks there. which is entertaining to me. Again, he's a jerk, but I think you have to think of the Sonic as a villain protagonist. Like a lovable villain like Scourge, who is just being a hero because it happens to be fun to him. To see him as more entertaining than just an irritating and overrated hero. Anyways, with the Chaotix back in their apartment, Vector mentions that Knuckles wasn't happy. Mighty asks how they can complete the research when they're out of money. See, this actually explains why the Chaotix would have very little money, unlike in the games. And most glaringly, the reboot starting with the crossover, where they're only poor to mimic the games. Normally, I can't buy that a detective agency like the Chaotix would be that poor. It feels like they're just being handed the short end of the stick out of unnecessary spite when they're heroes. But here, of course they'd have spent a lot of money. I don't even think they are a detective service here, so without jobs they'd be pretty poor. They benefit a lot from taking the hero job that the Freedom Fighters have, which I assume gets the money from doing it as rewards, since how else would the heroes hold down the rent? Vector says that the mortgage allowed them to get all the research material they needed. And now it's time to begin some experiments, with the story ending with some papers on a table in front of them. Again, if they can't bring back the people in the zone, what's the point? In the next story, we start out in downtown Metropolis where Big is complaining that he's starving and doesn't have a lot of money. How does he have any money at all? Is he paid to just fish randomly in the water he sees with regular fishing rods? Also, where's Chaos the Fish? I thought he was supposed to be Big's Froggy in this comic. Only more entertaining because he actually talks and is hilariously evil. I guess Big really did eat him, but I think that would be a waste of a villain, so I doubt they'd do that. I guess he jumped into the water and swam away. Then he sees an open buffet outside where the Roach family is having a wedding. So is this the Mafia family? I mean, the big guy wearing a tuxedo looks pretty menacing, and yep, he mentions the Great Dawn, and an interjection using his name. That doesn't feel natural for him to say. Since when does someone use their boss as an interjection? Don't people tend to hate their bosses? He's naturally mad at Big for eating the entire wedding dinner and stupidly taking a nap when the table was on. As you'd expect, the Mafia family wants to kill Big, and he naturally complains about running away on a full stomach. So Big is just totally nonchalant about eating some food that doesn't belong to him, just because he's hungry. Does that mean he steals food from the markets and stuff? That's an interesting take on his character. Harvestman complains over the phone about being in trouble for failing his mission with Oscar against Sonic and agrees to kill Big to get out of the trouble. He shoots Big with a ray gun in the chest, which I doubt will kill him because that'd be really gutsy, especially in Big's first ever story to himself. Though Big isn't really that popular of a character, but it's also only page 3. So unless the rest of the story focuses on other people, or him getting rid of the body, it's probably going to lead to a fight between Big and Harvestman. Harvestman reveals that he's been keeping count of all his assassinations, as well as all the times that he shot someone at point-blank range with a silenced .45 handgun. At first, Big looks stupid by talking as if he didn't know his gun went off and it was an accident, but fortunately he gets badass by hitting him at the end of his dialogue looking angry. Harvestman asks Big if he caught the bullet, and Big says you can't shoot a cat because the reflexes are too fast, apparently. That was convenient. I thought he shot a laser at him. And even if you could catch a bullet, at the speed it's moving towards you, there's no way that would help. It just keep on moving with its momentum and go through your hand. Unless Big can also magically freeze the bullet in place at the same time with telekinesis. I would have thought that's better if Big was just fine after being hit with a laser, like is usually the case in this comic. Maybe he had Ring. Big actually agrees with Harvestman's insults and runs away saying "we," causing Harvestman to call for backup. In the next story, after Knuckles inexplicably decides not to touch the light to get his answers to focus on his guardianness instead, which is out complete nowhere considering the previous story, he's taunted about being easily distracted, and a possessed Tikal hits him and says that while he offered Knuckles knowledge, he chose ignorance and misery. The ghost says that psychics are easy to possess. Good, they confirmed that she's officially a psychic. That's good writing. What I'm not sure is good writing, though, is her randomly being unpossessed in the next panel when it's supposed to be that psychics are easy to possess, which seems anticlimactic. The ghost doesn't even talk as if he's surprised at suddenly being forced out to call if Knuckles takes her hand. The ghost reveals that he was banished thousands of years ago somehow, and now he can reclaim his true form as the god of death, which he's just able to do just now. You know, I think it feels more like the Sonic franchise for there to be focus on echidnas, because, you know, echidnas associated with Sonic, rather than like a god of death out of nowhere. This is what they have to resort to because they don't want to have echidnas. After he brags that he named mortals and killed millions, he gets impatient with the build-up and wants to skip straight to the killing. So are there other gods than just the god of death, and if so, are they too weak to punish him and keep him from doing this? The ghost echidnas attack Knuckles and Tikal, and out of complete nowhere, Knuckles gets the idea to walk backwards with Tikal grabbing hold of her. This is reminding me of how Sonic escaped the place of lost souls with the kids in Shinetsu by closing his eyes to the illusions and holding their hands. You'd think illusions would be visible to people regardless of whether their eyes were closed to them because it'd be a thing where their brains were brainwashed to see them. Also, I guess these ghosts are forced to be evil by the god of death, because otherwise, why wouldn't they be on Knuckles' side? Knuckles punches through the wall after that contrived escape, and he and Tikal leave the temple, with the god of death being eager for a chase. Knuckles says that there's no way he can fight off the skeleton army, and they go through the Zoot Tube to the Chaos Chamber. Why can't the ghost just follow him through it? After the god of death just follows him through it, Knuckles blatantly tells him to keep talking while he'll think of a way to stop him. Why give away your plan immediately? The god of death lampshades that his plan is obvious, hits Knuckles with a laser, which I doubt the comic actually had kill him, and the story ends. The first and third stories were by Ed Reynolds, and the second story was by Jamie J. The first story has a lot of charm and a lot of tension, perfect balance and tone for Sonic, where we have the tension with the sandworm threatening to destroy Angel Island and eat the Chaos Seminoles, and we have it be because of a humorous problem. Vector had mortgaged the island to a debt collector to fund his research into restoring the Special Zone. And Sonic defeats the bad guy by threatening to throw the sandworm through the portal to the empty void, with the debt collector buying that he'd do it with the chaotics and the sandworm because I guess he doesn't know Sonic well enough. It ends with some hope that the Special Zone's on the way to being restored, but since it's just an empty void, good luck getting the people back. The second story has Big eat the buffet at a mafia wedding, get Harvestmen sent after him, and he catches a bullet perfectly fine out of nowhere in a very contrived way to excuse him not dying, when he could have just had rings or dodged it. The third story has Knuckles and Tikal get threatened by the god of death in an Echidna temple, and out of nowhere Knuckles gets an idea to walk backwards to escape the ghost unharmed. And after they leave to get to the Chaos Chamber, Knuckles gets dealt with thanks to a laser, though sure he's fine, or at the very worst, only temporarily dead until the end of story arc. Besides, Tikal's in front of Master Emerald, why wouldn't she be fine?